You must be Mr. Baggins.
No, you can't come in. You come to the wrong house.
What? Has it been cancelled?
No one told us.
No, nothing's been cancelled.
That's a relief.
Careful with these. I just had them sharpened.
It's nice, this place. Did you do it yourself?
Well, no, it's been in the family for years. That's my mother's glory box. Can you please not do that?
Keely, come on, give us a hand. Mr. Dwalin.
Let's shove this in the hole, otherwise we'll never get everyone in.
Hey, everyone? How many more are there?
Where do you want this?
Oh, no.
No, there's nobody home! Go away and bother somebody else!
I'm now joined on an unexpected journey, all of my own, by the Guardian's Peter Bradshaw and Henry Barnes. Peter, the original book, The Hobbit, was a standalone book, not even a particularly long book, but it has now been stretched, cranked out into 3 separate movies.
Yes, it's sort of incredible that this very slight, rather unassuming children's bedtime tale is going to occupy the same amount of space as the massive epic trilogy. I mean, next thing you know, he's going to do a 10-movie version of the Silmarillion or something like that. There is something massively disproportionate about it. But if you're, like me, not a very great Tolkien admirer, you have no great allegiance to the integrity of the original, then this hugely overinflated act of fan love is kind of daft, but amiable and kind of likeable. I don't have a problem with its length as such. But I think there is an elephant in the room problem with The Hobbit, and that is just basically the look of the thing. It's shot on high frame rate, 48 frames per second, which was this extraordinary technical act of pioneering, and we were all very excited to see what it looked like. And sadly, it looks like this. It looks like television, and I think there is almost a sort of Emperor's New Clothes conspiracy among executives and even perhaps critics not to sort of say it out loud. But that's what I have to say stunned me from the get-go. I sort of got used to it a bit. I never stopped thinking about it though, but I did get used to it, and there's a lot to like about The Hobbit.
Henry, there's been a lot of lurid advanced word about this high frame rate, 48 frames per second. There have been stories about people getting nauseous and throwing up in the aisle and speaking in tongues. Some of their heads exploded. How was it for you though?
I found it disconcerting. I mean, I agree with Peter to an extent, but the main thing for me was that there's a stark difference now between the live action elements of the film and everything else that has been created through CGI. And I think the one problem with 48 frames per second is it's supposed to make things look more realistic, but in that way it completely draws back the curtain on all the computer animated stuff and takes you right inside the sausage factory, and you're suddenly seeing the guts of how all this stuff is made. And it does look like a very expensive school play in effect, because you've kind of got this live action thing in the front and then a glossy background in the background, and they just look completely at odds with each other. But in a weird way, how the thing looks almost doesn't matter to me, because The Hobbit is sort of like Formula One or Morris dancing, and it's a part of British culture that I do not understand. I don't get the mythology. I don't find any of the characters, bar maybe Gollum, interesting. I mean, the dwarves in this film, for example, don't have a character at all between 13 of them, as far as I can tell. There's more character in Snow White.
There's the odd character, but the odd character that kind of jars against Tolkien's original thing. I think it's Ori, who's basically played as a camp crusty, who's just like emerged from the hemp shop. And you think, I don't think Tolkien wrote him as this. And he says, "Oh, you got any chips?" There is much to enjoy here, though. We're being quite down on it, but there's certainly a kind of antic energy in there and a sort of boisterousness.
Oh, and I thought Martin Freeman, who's got an incredibly difficult role to play. You know, Bilbo Baggins is not essentially a likeable character until, well, I guess in this world, until halfway through the second movie next year. But he does carry it really well. You're kind of convinced by this ordinary man thrown into an extraordinary adventure. And I like him in this, and I think he does a fantastic job with it. The rest of the cast, James Nesbitt as one of the dwarves, I don't know their names, but Stinky or Dozy or
Ken
Grumpy.
Stott. I like Ken Stott, even though he had that huge ridiculous nose, which other people say looks just absurdly false, but I thought it was quite funny that it looked so absurdly false.
I think you've got McKellen back as Gandalf.
Ian McKellen,
well.
It's nice to see him back actually, because he looks like, here I am back again, not trying, thinking about something else, enjoying myself, and it's very watchable. What I thought was interesting about Martin Freeman is he's acting much less than I've seen him act in almost anything else. I think it was the most underplayed he's ever been, really, in any of his films. It reminded me of Tim from The Office, really, in that it was absolutely laid back and calm and not acting at all. The rest of them were acting their heads off or being as stiff and as immobile as waxworks, rather like Kate Blanchett and Christopher Lee as Galadriel and Saruman. But he was totally relaxed, inhabiting this perhaps rather telly-ish world, but he looked totally at home. And he's an attractive presence on screen.
Do you worry that the attractive presence might begin to thin and fray over two more films?
Yes, I do. I mean, I felt at the end of it, as I say, I didn't mind it and I didn't have a problem with it at the end, but I felt at the end of nearly 3 hours, I'd had enough of a goodish thing now, and the thought of two more films like this, where the story arc and the character development and all those absurd, quaint ideas are going to be very, very unclear, to say the very least of it, I sort of quail a bit. But who knows? Who knows?
We know safe paths for hobbitses. Safe paths in the dark. Shut up!
I didn't say anything.
I wasn't talking to you.